My aunt has been an FBI agent for 25 years. The only thing I know about her job is that she's an office administrator. But her information went public somehow when she was part of the team that investigated the Mandalay Bay shooting in Las Vegas. Someone found the name and address of most of the agents that worked that scene and put it up online. Not sure why. She also took me and my family on a tour of the Las Vegas FBI headquarters about 15 years ago. One thing interesting that I remember about the building is that all the doors were floor-to-ceiling 9-foot doors. Thought that was weird. Met an old retired CIA spook at a wedding reception. Spitting image of Colonel Sanders, he was amazing. So I asked him, "I don't want you to tell me anything you can't, but I'd love to know, when Kennedy got killed, what was the talk around the water cooler in the office?" He didn't halt or pause to think. Hell, we all thought Johnson did it. I have a relative that retired from the NSA a few years ago. She has talked about a few things in generalities, nothing specific. Among them, you will see things that entirely change your view of the world. People go in there all the time with lofty goals of changing things, and within months, those goals are mostly gone. Still, if you want to change things, you work for the agency. If you just want to make money, you work for a contractor. No one cares what contractors have to say. Most people that stay long enough will do a tour in counterterrorism. Many people transfer out after a few months, and the average stay is 2 years because of the visuals. Those who stick around for a long time often change for the worse, and many struggle with mental illnesses, become alcoholics, get divorced, and generally lead miserable lives with their work. Their only reason for continuing. Alcoholism in general is rife in the agency. When you cannot speak to anyone outside the agency about your work, it becomes nearly impossible to confide in anyone close to you.
Even if you have close work friends or family, you have to be careful what you say, because not everyone is read into every program. 2 people can sit next to each other in the same office, working on the same subject for months, and never talk about it with each other even though they're close friends outside the agency. So people turn to the bottle. Her husband worked for a different government agency and also had a top-secret SCI clearance, but she couldn't talk about her work with him, nor could he with her, but his didn't involve the intelligence community. The agency employs psychiatrists who are cleared to be read into almost any program. Going to them, though, is often seen as a mark of shame among other agency employees, so they are not used nearly as often as they should be. She told me most of these things while trying to recruit me. She believed that I should go in knowing what to expect. I eventually declined to apply.
2 family stories, even though this will probably get buried. 1. My father's uncle told everyone for his entire life that he worked at a button factory. It was only revealed after his death that he, in fact, worked at a missile factory and assembled the gyroscopes for the guidance in missiles. 2. We always knew my grandfather worked for the government at the Pentagon. We never knew exactly what he did, but every 6 months or so, he would call up to talk to my mom. The conversation was pretty much always the same. My mom and grandfather would catch up for a few, then it would turn into, "So I have another clearance upgrade coming up. You will probably get a call like always. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Surer than shit, a week later, some government agency would call up. It was always a different one. And ask for my mom. They would ask a bunch of questions, and that would be that. When he died from Alzheimer's at his funeral, 4 men in black suits attended, and no one knew who they were. After the burial, they approached his widow and handed her a plaque with 17 government agency symbols on it. Turns out he was responsible for interagency cooperation and training. He basically got everyone to talk to and teach each other. Now his son works for them, doing what? We don't know, and don't ask. I have a few friends that are CIA officers. First thing is that the people that work for the CIA are not CIA agents. They are officers. The people they recruit to spy for them are agents. Also, going on a tangent, I am 90% sure I have been one of those agents when I was dealing with a Mexican logistics company while working at General Motors. The logistics company we were dealing with was owned by a multi-billion-dollar Mexican clan, and all the ultra-wealthy clans in Mexico all have ties to various cartels. So some federal agencies got involved, mainly FBI and I believe a few DEA. But one guy was specifically not wearing any badges, was not willing to identify what agency he was working for, and questioned me on a lot of specific details of what the company's capabilities were. Though getting back on track, anyone who is a US citizen can apply to join the CIA. It isn't that hard. If you have any kind of degree in computer science, statistics, engineering, or accounting, and don't have anything that would fuck up you, getting a clearance, getting a job would be relatively easy there. And as implied with that previous comment, working at the CIA is far more boring than you would think. Lots of tracing manufacturing capabilities. From what I described with that Mexican logistics company, to finding out how China sources the components they use to manufacture their satellites. My dad was a Chief Petty Officer Navy Airborne. He was the chief on the largest plane they had at the time. It had 3 tails. I was always told growing up he flew dignitaries around to meetings in different countries as a kind of goodwill thing. The large plane crashed in Antarctica. They replaced it with a state-of-the-art jet that had a sonar disc attached to the roof. He got permission from Warner Brothers to paint Wile E. Coyote on one side and Roadrunner on the other. About 10 years ago or so, the Navy declassified a bunch of documents. I was going through them online just for a lark and saw my dad's plane. It was a NOAA document. I wrote the person who had declassified the papers and told him I saw my dad's plane in them. He asked who my dad was, and I told him. He said Dad was real famous, like those ladies who worked for NASA and could solve all those math problems with ease. I knew he was intelligent and had skipped 3 grades in school, but had no clue he was famous. The man told me Project Magnet that he was working on replotted the longitudes and latitudes to correct maps around the world. He said the measurements were so accurate they are still used today by NOAA. This was before there were calculators. I had no clue. This was done in the late 50s, early 60s. Dad passed away from a heart condition in the mid-70s. All this time, I had no idea. The guy that declassified this sent this information in an email with their letterhead. Somewhat off topic, but a friend and former college roommate told me about a time in high school when he was writing a paper on government law enforcement agencies or some such, and he was going to include information about the FBI. So he figured he'd stop by the nearest FBI office to ask if they had any fact sheets or literature available to the public that he could use for source material. When he walked in, before he'd said a word, an agent looked up and said, "Right?" Of course, he nearly shit himself. It turned out that they'd had to do an investigation on him not long before. He was a volunteer with the Civil Air Patrol and had introduced himself at some event, but when he said CAP, someone who heard it thought he said CAB, Civil Aeronautics Board, a federal agency, and knew that at his age there was no way he was a CAB employee, so they reported it. Impersonating a federal official is a federal crime, so the FBI investigated, quickly determined it had been an innocent misunderstanding, and closed the investigation without ever needing to contact him. When he walked in that day, the first person he ran across happened to be the agent who'd been assigned the investigation. He went on to a distinguished career, CSO/CIO, in the IT security industry, and I'm sure has met more FBI agents since then. But I doubt if many have topped that one as far as making a great first impression. My best friend in high school was extremely smart, adopted, and of Iranian descent. He has a full ride to Oklahoma State for business. About a month before we graduated, he changed schools and went to Michigan for Arabic studies. He slowly disappeared off of the internet, and he only came to visit a few times during college. He called me before I graduated and asked me to be prepared for an interview about him. I had 2 government phone calls asking questions about him, and men in suits came to our school and got every piece of information with his name on it and confiscated it. He was completely MIA for 5 years. He's back online now, and I see him when he comes home a few times a year. He always says he'll be able to tell me what he did after 20 years. As for now, he says he is a project manager at a company that makes glass jars. But he has made some comments that lead me to think that's just a cover job.